Hello there, Andy Berryman, and I'm doing my final video explanation of my post-production work. I've done this in my specialist project and it seemed like the best way of getting all the information across. So I'm doing another one now, and I'll try and run through the work I did to save on a bit of reading for you and a bit of writing for me. So what I'm going to do is just go through my different After Effects compositions that I have here and try and talk through how I made a few of the effects seen in the final video, why I made the choices I made, and maybe just some little technical bits on how it all went down as well. So I'll start off across at the left here, and this is just, you can see this is just kind of a shape layer that's morphing about, and this was the first kind of incarnation of the things that you see in the final video, where you have just layers kind of morphing around, more like this here. Let me turn this background off for you. So all I really wanted to do was do a futuristic looking kind of pattern. I just went with these colours because they're contrasting colours, and I thought I'd add the effect where they cross over in the middle as well, just to add a little bit of extra interest and a little bit of extra depth to it. I've just got the layers set up so that they're kind of flying around each other, and the way that these are changing shape is purely just by having a solid with a mask around it, and then over time the mask is just animated so that it changes shape. So it's very, very simple, just a solid with a mask changing shape, and then layer them up together, and before you know it, you have some cool kind of interacting shapes. And then the great thing about this is I tried to time it to 8 seconds long so that I can then later on try and match it with the beat of some music. Just by speeding it up or slowing it down, it gives you the desired effect. Moving on through here, I think I'll come to that one just a little bit later because it makes a lot more sense. Okay, so this is a very simple effect, but it's one that I feel worked quite well in the final video. This is the car motion effect, and I did this by putting a GoPro on the front of my car and then driving along the dual carriageway, and I included the car scene to try and get the idea that when you have an energy drink, it keeps you nice and alert when you're driving and boosts your focus. So all I've done is literally just use a simple mask on each one with a nice feather on it, and take out the expansion a little bit just to divide it up into two parts. The idea being that because you've got one bit on each screen, it gives a little bit of a tilt shift perspective. If you move your head side to side as you're looking at it, you can actually see the front is completely separate to the back. Okay, on to the next one. Now this is the one that we were on a second ago, which is my finale kind of piece, if you like, with Monster Energy. It's got loads and loads of different elements to it. Took a very long time for quite a short amount of work, but I think it was worth it because it's a nice little finale to the piece. And basically what it is a text layer which we have right down at the bottom here, and that's actually its own composition. So if we go into that, you can see here's my text layer, Monster Energy, and that's just built up with various different textures. It's a metal texture actually, which is somewhere in this big list of things I've been using, just to give it that kind of grungy feel, make it look like it's not just a font but actually has a bit of life to it. So I've track matted the texture there, which I believe is this one, and yeah, and then once I've got that, it was all just a case of there's our texture. So I've used that as a track matte just to try and give the text a little bit more life and a little more interest. And then once I had the text sorted, we move on to this kind of shatter effect that you can see here. And the way that this works is we have loads and loads of different layers, and basically each one of them just represents a little slice of the text. So as we move on to the next layer, you can see it takes another slice and another slice, and so on and so forth. And then underneath all these layers, we have a shatterize. It's actually Pixel Poly is the plugin it's called. Here it is, Pixel Poly, and that allows you to change things like how much force the different parts are exploding with, and the kind of rotation that we have on our different bits of material here as well. Obviously the reason I've gone with green is because it's the colours of Monster Energy, so I really wanted to keep a bit of a theme there and try and keep a theme throughout. And basically as we shatter through, we're revealing more and more of what's underneath, which is a shatter effect. And then eventually we get to a stage where all the text is gone and you're just left with these shattered pieces. You can see they just animate through, collapse back into themselves. And then I've just used some blur effects, plenty of motion blur, and then they just gently fade away after they've exploded through. So I think that's a really good effect as kind of a finale piece at the end, because once it's projected up on the glass, it looks just great, I think. And we've got loads of different techniques used in there. It was really great practice, quite time consuming, but obviously very much worth it. And then as we move on, we have this, which is my light streak effect, which is used a lot in the video. Actually, it's used near the start of the video. You'll see we have the light streaks going ahead of around the can and in front of the can and all kinds of stuff like that. And the way that this was made actually is we have an emitter here, which is a light, and everything is following and tracked to that emitter. So that's the bit that we're animating. You see it just animates through. If we just hit U to get our keyframes up, that's the bit that animates through. And as that goes, everything else follows it. So what's following it actually is a particle layer, which has Trapco particular on it, and that's set up with a custom particle that I had to draw myself. And then it's over here. So what you do is you take a custom particle, such as this, wherever it's gone, and what you do is basically you can't see it now because of the way it's been used in other layers, but that's just a tiny little particle about 50 pixels across by 50 pixels across, and here it is. There we go. So this is just a tiny little particle made up of all these different elements here that combine together. So just different solids, and then by having an emitter on our light beam effect, we're emitting loads and loads of those little custom particles, and the effect is that they all kind of stack on top of each other to give this kind of streak effect. So it's great. If you wanted to, you could make this streak appear in all kinds of different ways just by changing that custom particle that you're emitting, which I believe is down here. Sprite, that's what you need to set it to. If you can have all their presets, but so for example, that's just if you had a regular sphere, or whatever you want, maybe a little cloudlet, or you get all those different effects. But I think obviously if you spend the time to make the custom particle so that you have this nice little sprite, it does look an awful lot better. And then you'll notice as it slows down around the corners, that the particles all stack on top of one another and add up to give this really nice kind of hot glow effect, which adds as well. So I think I use this technique to good effect. This particular composition here is the one where it just wiggles around itself, and I believe I did that by going, if we go position and then alt click on the keyframe. That's right. We can just set little expressions to choose where we want our different where we want our emitter to go, and then by just setting an expression in there, such as wiggle 0.5, 0.5 bracket 180 or something, then it gives us a whole different map of where it's going. So this is great because obviously you don't have any control of where it's going, but by using little expressions like this, you can create whole new patterns and effects, really just by creating new layers and typing new expressions, which is brilliant. And then you'll notice also that the line's formed, but it doesn't fade away. It just stays like a light streak, and that again is just down to our particles, how long we leave the life of the particles on for. So I think that kind of covers off that effect. Like I said, it was really, really nice to have it in the video where it's going in front of the can and behind, because of course the whole way through designing this I was just trying to keep in mind how I can make it obvious what's going on with the technology, and I wanted to avoid making this whole rig and then not making it obvious to the audience what it was doing. So when I'm doing effects like this, you see the light streak actually going in front of the can. I think that's really important, and that's something I've tried to reinforce the whole way through my edit. It's actually making it obvious what this rig's doing, and just trying to really experiment with it as many different options as I can. Okay, and then also one other thing I forgot to mention, but I won't go into too much detail on, is you notice there's another little particle layer as well that just lets out these tiny little spheres as well, which wasn't on the tutorial I did, but I just thought it added another nice little layer the way that they add on themselves as well. Okay, and then we'll go to, that's just a template. Okay, for this. Now this is an effect I hadn't worked on before that I was really pleased with in the final result, and it's this kind of digital growth effect in the background, and then by using a 3D camera and that text template that you can see over here, you end up with this really nice kind of 3D fly around where as you go to different stages through, you see the layers interact with one another. There's actually a third layer really close to the camera here as well, which is just kind of smudging across the front, and this is really just to add as much depth as I can to the work here. I've used sharpen reflexes again, trying to stick with the theme of Monster Energy and how it's, you know, boosts your attention and your reflexes and keeps you feeling really sharp and alert. And I've used adjustment layers to get this lovely blue, this lovely kind of blue effect and a glow. The text kind of interacts slightly in that it keeps a theme throughout, and I've got my digital growth composition here, which might be interesting to look at if we kind of go into here. So this is great because once you've made it, you can just copy these layers and create all kinds of different setups and growths and patterns just with the same thing. So you can see I've made a layer here. If I just fly this out on its own a little bit, you can start to form your own patterns and your own ways of making this. So there we go. So just to briefly go through this, what we've got is actually a lightning effect to create the actual streaks here. It's an effect called advanced lightning, and usually it looks like an actual bolt of lightning. So there we go. It looks more like an actual bolt of lightning, and it has all these other layers tracked onto it, which is another part of the effect that I had to do myself to track all these other layers and make them interact with the actual lightning. But the brilliant thing is that depending on how you set this, everything else follows it. So if I go from direction back to bouncy, which is what I want, you get this grid, and you can see all the little dots actually still follow it. And I've got an adjustment layer over the top for the color, and all the different layers add up one over another, which is brilliant, because then once you've mastered this effect of using the lightning to make a grid, you can just duplicate these layers as much as you want, layer them over each other, and create all kinds of different things with it. Again, adjustment layer is extremely important in getting the aesthetic of the piece, to get the glow, to get the colour in there, to get these dots over the top as well. So here we go. And then it's CC starburst to get those dots that follow over it. Back to our adjustment layers, and then as you can see, as you turn these back on, we're getting all of the nice colour and glow back into it. So that's how you make that effect. And then really once I had that mastered, I just made loads of different versions, and then used it with the text to try and keep a theme throughout. And when designing all of these After Effects, and when going through and thinking how I wanted the piece to look, I took inspiration from quite a few different sources, such as Star Trek. I love the newer Star Trek films, how they have all these space age kind of things going on in the background. It's just got a really nice crisp look to it. All of the consoles, I suppose you would call them, have got a really nice kind of fresh look to them, which I wanted to follow as well. Minority Report, the film with Tom Cruise, has always been really big inspiration to me, because I love these scenes, especially when it first came out, these scenes they did where he's working on these consoles and there's all these different elements coming up and loads of information, and this just really crisp futuristic look. You see they're using their blues a lot, like I tried to as well. I kind of used some blues and some pinks and some purples. Even on the cover, actually, you can see him operating his thing there, so it's quite iconic. And then there's this brilliant website as well for Halo, which is a game I'm really fond of. And I just think the aesthetic and the way that they've designed this and laid it out is really just a nice example of how to do motion graphic design work. It's all got nice kind of pale colours and nice simple, here we go, nice little simple touches, little particle effects even in here, and as you go onto different things, they all fly out and install and what have you. So that was a big inspiration as well when I was trying to design how I was going to keep the look of the whole thing. So moving on, this was a really challenging but a really satisfying effect to do as well, and this comes in at the part of the video where we have our kind of magnification scene, if you like. Here we go. So this effect is the one you can see up in the top right now, and the way that I made this is just to go actually into the composition here, is to have one set of particles that emit to begin with, and then a set of auxiliary particles that emit from those original ones. So I think my computer's under the strain a little bit here, so we'll have to be a little bit patient. But you can see what's happening is we have our particles here, and as we go down into the settings, you can see. Let's go to the bottom layer. That's probably the best. Yeah, there we go. Okay, but you can see the way that it's been created and the way that it works is you have this thing called an auxiliary system. So once you open that up, that gives you all kinds of options on how you want a secondary set of particles to be produced. So, for example, if we go before our work area starts, I'll do my best to kind of explain this without dragging on too much. But before our work area even starts, you can see there's a brief burst of particles that come out, and the effect grows. And then after a second or so, it just stops and just keeps its size. And I only start my work area after that point, once it's already grown, and it leaves behind these lovely green trails here. And you set the life of the auxiliary particles so that they don't fade away after they've grown. They stay in this nice kind of spore configuration. And there's all kinds of things you can change. This one's quite important, this color over life, because that is the effect that's actually giving you the color of your spore here. So as you can see, I've got the tips as white, and then it fades through the greens down to a kind of much darker green. And again, obviously the reason I've gone for that particular choice is to keep the theme of Monster Energy. And there's nothing scientific about this, but again, it's just reinforcing the green throughout, and getting the idea that you're looking inside the can and seeing what's going on inside with this little kind of mechanism I've designed here. So to move on from that, another thing what I've done here is I've just duplicated the layers and then just set them back in Z space so that I can push them back further away from my camera layer. And then all that's doing again is just giving it a little bit more pizzazz, because as the shot goes through, you'll notice the layers in the background actually move relative to how the layer in the foreground is spinning. So again, it's just trying to keep that 3D look throughout, and actually give the thing a bit of depth. Okay, so we've covered off that one. I've talked about that. Talked about that one. This is just an example of how I was saying earlier. Once you've set up your effect, you can do whatever combination of it you want. So this is just another one, best served ice cold. Oh yeah, this is a whole new effect in itself, really. And this is quite a subtle one. I'm not sure how much of it everybody got, but if I go into my Premiere here, we'll try and find the effect. For the an important thing to mention is for my video syncing, obviously I need 2 video tracks. So in my Premiere, where I've got all my footage, I've got everything I used, but then also I've got 2 sequences. So I've got one called Telly, which is for the television at the rear, and one called Glass, which is what's going to be projected up onto the glass and the in the foreground. So here, and I can't show you how I made it because it's in another After Effects project, and if I open that up now, it's just going to crash everything and slow us down. But basically what it consists of is a solid with a track mat underneath it to give the ice a bit of texture, and then all I did was I just animated a mask with quite a large expansion on it, so that as it comes through, you can see that the ice starts at the corner of the screens and then frosts towards the middle. And on my glass layer, I've just got this texture, but of course because of the nature of the project, it's translucent, so it looks like an actual frost you can see through, even though as you can see, the effect on here is quite opaque. I haven't lowered the opacity or anything like that. But on the television, if we go to the exact same point, 1 minute, it's going to be 1 minute 15, or 1 minute 20 is a better example. But this is how I had to do all of the editing as well, was to just set everything so it was the exact same time, 3, 2, 1 at the start, and then obviously everything on the glass is back to front, which I'll talk about more later. But just to stay on this frost effect for now, on the television, what we've got at 1 minute 20, as I just said, is best served ice cold. But you can see as the frost moves across on the front layer, I've introduced a blur effect on the rear layer. The idea being that as the frost is moving across, it's kind of impairing your vision and skewing what's behind it. And this is an effect that I was quite pleased with, actually. This is one of the points where I could improve the project, was if you used software instead of manual techniques to really perfectly sync up the layers. It would do a better job of blurring as the frost comes across. But it worked quite well in the crit. As the frost appears on the screen, the background blurs out. And then another little quite subtle thing I did that I'm not sure how easy it is to notice the first time viewing, but I've also chopped the sound and added an audio effect, which is I believe it's a low pass filter. I'm not the best on audio effects, but I believe it's a low pass filter, so that when the ice comes across the screen, the music also muffles as well. It has a much much more muted, kind of bassier sound, as if to suggest that this ice is grown across the front, and not only is it impairing your vision as well, frost coming over, but really try and integrate it the whole way across to try and be immersive. And of course, best served ice cold fits with the drink being chilly, and the frost obviously goes over the front of the drink as well, so that's something I was quite happy with. If we just dip back into After Effects here and move on. Now I believe, yep, that's just another one. And I had to be careful here as well when designing this, that the text was high up enough so that you could see it. If it was going to be behind the can, I had to make sure the text was high up so that the can didn't obscure it. So as you can see, this one here, the text is based in the top half. I believe there's another one as well where the text is based really high up so you can see it. And this one, the text is in the middle. But there is a reason for that, why I wasn't worried about the can obscuring it, and that's because I just made it into another effect in itself. So if we get to, I believe, this part here, boost focus, you can see all the digital growth animating and coming through in the back. But then what I've done is synced up the video tracks perfectly to the frame, and you can see it just goes a frame on, a frame off, frame on, frame off, and animates through like that. And then if we go to our glass and we go to exactly 37 seconds, 37, you'll see it does the alternate. It does frame on, frame off, frame on, frame off. The final effect of which in the actual video, which I try to visualize all of these things as I'm making it. Obviously there's a certain amount of trial and error involved, but I did try to think about it, is that it goes from being behind the video, let's see if we can play, I think my computer's straining a bit, to being in front of the can. And as I was trying to say at the start, I think it's really important to keep in mind the possibilities of this technology and how you can actually make it obvious that or not even make it obvious. I mean, what I'm really saying is how to best utilize the technology. So I was really pleased with the idea of text coming from behind and then this flicker glitch to where it ends up in front. I think really has a nice impact and shows why the technology is important and how it's best used. So that's an effect that I was really pleased with. And now is also a good time to touch on. You can see obviously this is backwards here. It says sufuk to sub instead of boost focus, because obviously everything is back to front. So that meant on my glass layer I just use a really simple little effect. If we go to effect controls, and all we have to do is just put a horizontal flip on there. So it's just a case of going through everything in my glass layer and anything that was text based or that I wanted to have on a certain side of the screen, I had to put a horizontal flip on so that it all matches up perfectly. There's no need for that on the television layer, of course, because there's no glass involved. You're just looking at it through the glass. But it's quite nice. Just that simple effect gives the correction to the reflection, so to speak. Let's see if there's anything I haven't covered here. This is quite important to mention. This was one of my last test rigs that I did, or once I'd made my prototype, I should say. I set it up and I spent a very long time moving around my can and then also moving around this layer with loads of different compositions, so that I could have this can perfectly in sync with my actual can that was mounted on the tripod. It wasn't a case of just chucking it in the scene and hoping it works. I made this, this is a photograph of the actual can itself, and then I've scaled this to exactly the point where it's going to fit the real life can perfectly, and then from there I can take that layer out into other effects, so I know exactly where to build things. These are just more beam effects. Now this is a good one to mention. This is why the what I just talked about is important. I believe the layer is just to the bottom here. Yep, here we go. So you can see if I flick on and off this layer, it's telling me exactly where the can is, and from there I can just use my techniques to create all of this stuff around it and make sure that it actually syncs up. And then the result of that is that in the final video, the animation actually sits where it's supposed to. So you can see the circles directly on the can. This red element here is scanning up and down the can, and it took quite a lot of planning to get that perfect, but that's an important thing because this technology has a lot of applications, and I think the really unique thing about it is this real life element in the middle. So you could have sets and put characters over the front, or you could build things to map around. So having the ability to just find out exactly how big your real life object is and then map according to it is very important. I think it's quite noteworthy. I'll just briefly go over a couple of the little bits in here. It's fairly simple stuff for me now. I think After Effects is something that I've worked on the most since joining the course. So it's just various shape layers that I've tried to keep a bit of a common theme between the colours and the glow and what have you that I've just drawn. And text as well. I've used the same font throughout. And then this little element here is just a waveform that I designed. And then obviously I just switched it around and kind of composited it in, changed the colours and what have you, just to try and give this little scientific effect. So you can see there, all it's really pretty simple stuff. Just making a mask so that I can affect what the cursor looks like. So you could have a 3-parter, or you could have whatever you want. You just change it around by using masking, similar to other projects I've done. You know, there's loads you can do with it, and then obviously you just go layers, and then pre-compose, and then once you've pre-composed it, it's nice and easy to just animate it within its own right. That I've done. Yeah, these are more of these trails, and earlier I talked about when I was using that wiggle expression to just let it do its own thing. In these compositions, I've actually chosen create actually a bit of unison between the two, so it exits at one place, enters at another. That I've done. So I think that covers off most of my After Effects. So with that said and done, there's really just a couple of little bits and bobs I'd like to mention about my actual Premiere linear editing. I already talked to you about how I've used 2 tracks synced up perfectly to kind of manage the glass and the television interacting with each other. And then throughout the edit, I've really just tried to I've got the music kind of matched up with these effects here. Really just wanted the point of this intro is really just to kind of give a bit of a shock, kind of shock the viewer into what's going on and have something appearing on both screens. On the glass, I've got this little effect here, which I believe I've mentioned on my blog, And basically what it is literally just something else I did in After Effects, where I've got a laser pen and I've just shone it on my bedroom wall, filmed it with my DSLR, and then I've just really boosted up the contrast and the luminosity to give it this really bright effect. And then because I was flicking it really fast, it just gives this crazy kind of overlay. So it's really simple. It's just me flicking about a laser pen and then doing a little bit of After Effects work to make it give it a bit more pizzazz. But I think that's really great because it really fits the music, the pace of the music really nicely, and it's just a useful little effect to throw into places. Talked about all this. Just little things like these elements I made are really useful because they're in here. These are the ones I'm referring to. They're really useful because I've got quite a lot of different ones that I made, and as well as just having them in the background to kind of keep something going on, I've adapted them into little transitions as well. So literally just kind of flash them up for a couple of frames so that as you go through, it just kind of goes blue. But as you can see, there's a spin, which is where it's actually just the layer scaled up. And then from there we can go into other things. So that was something that I didn't plan out, but actually worked out quite well in the end. Just little transitions, because I wanted the video to look nice and professional amongst other things. These sparks that I used, and I used this originally in my tests, in my test rig, but I was so happy with how it turned out. I gave it a little bit of a place on my final video as well, just because it really fit nicely, and the effect of those sparks bouncing around on the glass is great as well. So I've got that and a little bit more of this green stuff. This is something that I didn't show you on After Effects, but this is again just a double layer with my hands. This is literally just my hands being filmed with my DSLR in my bedroom in the dark, and I've just masked out any kind of junk that was in the corners. I mean, it was pretty black, but I just did do a soft mask around there to make sure there's a nice clean black background. And then if we go to 1 minute on the television as well, that is my Halo gameplay that I've just filmed off the television. So like I said in the crit, this is the only bit of I don't know, well, it's obvious it isn't mine, it's just a computer game, but I didn't want anyone to think that I've animated all this stuff. But again, it's just to show that Monster Energy keeps you really sharp and all that kind of stuff, and I like the effect of the hands mirrored over the front of the gameplay. I've covered that. And then again, this is just for my tests. I didn't want anything to go to waste, so that's just in the background as like a nice little finale. Show the actual logo and the brand name in front of this Monster Energy effect. So I believe that is everything. I thought I'd do a video log because there's so much work involved that it really would be pages and pages and pages of stuff for you to read. And I just think this is a far more efficient way of showing you the work that I put in the hours that went into making it happen. Really pleased with the final effect. If we go back to the video, you can see it all ends up flowing quite nicely, in my opinion. So I think that the key to success was having loads and loads and loads of God, my computer really is giving up now. Loads and loads of different elements I could call upon, and then just layering those up between the glass and the real thing. So thanks very much for watching. I hope that I explained why I made the choices I did, and where my inspiration come from, and that I've got a little bit of an aesthetic throughout. And yeah, this is obviously going to be the last video log. So thanks very much for 3 years on the course, and I hope you enjoyed finding out how I made this video. Cheers.